I'd like to start with a short introduction about P127, and specifically in line with the subject of today, in terms of like how can we deal with the old style and new style textual criticism for papyri. So I try to, yeah, okay. So P127 actually is an Oxyrhynchus papyrus housed in Oxford, and which is dated to the 5th century. It contains actually a few lines, but to some extent quite extensively, from Acts 10, 11, 12, 15, 16, and 17. And its text is strikingly close to that of Codex Pisae, which is the main representative of the Western text, or the so-called Western text, or the text, as we say now. And I will refer to Codex Pisae as O5 as customary. The similarity between the two texts is obviously a main interest for textual critics, specifically in relation to its affiliation with the Western text of Acts. So its Editio Princeps was published in 2009, and Parker and Pickering noticed that we've got a very interesting phenomenon, like P127 is an expanding free text, but then also has a strong tendency to omit sentence which is quite contradictory to some extent, but shows the difficulty of this papyrus. At the same time, they noticed that there is some evidence to reconsider the bipolar concept of this two-text form of the Book of Acts. 127 is an interesting text to start with. So there are many studies that have been published later, like that of Gable in 2001, and also substantial commentaries or commentaries of commentaries by Rius Gantre, Ramadiger, Anne, Farnes, and so on. I will just summarize the status questionis on the text of Acts briefly for those who are not so familiar with it. There are currently like two main views on the subject, and I will actually add a third one here. So the first one is that the traditional view sees the longer text of the Book of Acts in the Western text as a late corruption of the Alexandrian text. There is obviously the opposite views, and the main important alternative view is that, on the contrary, the Western text got simplified by later copists who no longer understood the key textual allusions to the Jewish scriptures, and resulting in a simplification of the text, leading to a shorter form of text. And I will add a third one, which might be, which is the subject of this presentation, which is a kind of interesting compromise with two French scholars, Boismard and Lamouille, and they issued a theory where O5, so Codex Pisae, is at times suggestive of an actually mixed text between the Western text and the Alexandrian text. And this position is something that I have come up with during my research on this papyrus. So because the interest is also to compare modern tools with ancient ways of working in textual criticism, we are lucky enough to have the ECM, which is the Editio Critica Major, and which gives the availability of electronic texts of manuscripts. And here we can see the papyrus with its transcription, which is obviously a handy way of not having to rewrite everything from scratch. And we can also compare it to the papyrus itself. obviously with this electronic ECM, with a couple of clicks, you can access the passage you want. However, I've noticed that while a one-to-one manuscript comparison is possible, the comparison of three manuscripts like Vaticanus, Codex Paisian 1-7, so 03, 05, and 1-7 is not possible, which means that if you click on one functionality of the electronic ECM, you can straight away access to the variant readings between two texts. But unfortunately, you can't do this for three different texts, which is the purpose of today. So as a result, we have to start again by, well, at least using the electronic text to make the comparison possible and have the three column ready for analysis. Another thing which actually was found out as not being too practical is that only a part of 1-7 is available digitally. So this is what you see above, with only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 portions of the papyrus. So in fact, you have to go back to the to the Editio Princeps done by Parker and Papyri. Actually, because the text is also rewritten in the ECM, I made the comparison between the Editio Princeps and what the ECM delivers as a retranscription. And it happens to be, luckily enough, like the same text, but there are very slight differences in where letters that are sometimes not legible, where scholars would differ which one to include and not. And I've reviewed Acts 16 and 17 to see and to gauge the difference. So I will divide my talk in just two parts. One is the traditional comparison between the three manuscripts, and then I will propose an alternative comparison. So first is looking at the evidence of these comparison in three columns. I've listed them all in one part of the manuscript, which is Acts 16 and 17. Why 16 and 17? Mainly because that's the longest available part as a continuous portion of the text, as opposed to a few lines or a few verses in the others. So I think it's a good text to start with. If we do the usual comparison, we will see examples of longer reading, which is obviously not a big surprise. The Western text is supposed to add material. Again, this is one view. The other view is that it has originally a longer reading, which was abbreviated later. So we can compare 05, 03, 05, and 1-7, and we can see a great familiarity or similarity between the two. Same thing either with a verbal clause or a nominal clause. And you will see that in some cases, like the second case, we have kind of the same verb, roughly in terms of idea, but it's still somehow different. Square brackets indicate obviously that the letters are not available or not legible. So it's just a reconstruct text that a longer portion of letters would include the epi before Krazontes. Same thing here in 1630, which has a longer reading in 1-7 and 05, but still with slight differences. One meaning making sure about the rest, and one making sure for himself that the prisoners are still in the prison in the context of Acts 16. If we go into shorter other differences. You have lexical differences, obviously, where alternative wording is used. Usually people call this substitutions, but substitution would mean that one text is original and the other has been changed, as opposed to lexical difference, which keeps the description objective. So we obviously see other differences like these lexical differences and also word differences. Usually word differences are not so important. It's just pre-verbal positions. However, 1618 gives an interesting rephrasing of the entire text, which is to some extent different than only a pre-verbal and position in terms of wording. So indeed, this old way of analyzing a text does not give satisfactory answers, because in the end you end up with the conclusion that one has been lengthened or made longer, or one is shorter, and you will see that 1 to 7 is similar to 05, which is something that we already knew in essence. So what I suggest here is to report a bit of the research that I had done on this with an alternative analysis. So here I would like to show that actually we've got divergent readings between 03, 05, and 1 to 7. Divergent meaning that the 3 would be different or express things differently. So 1618 is quite interesting in a sense that instead of having reported speech, we have a direct speech. So the 1 to 7 would say go or leave, go away, like exelte, as opposed to 05 and 03, which would have a rephrasing of the of this imperative into a more stylistic phrase. However, we can see that the wording is different between 05 and 03, which again is not too surprising because the ECM, the electronic ECM, gives us in one click all the other variant readings, which shows that there was some confusion by the copyists to which extent what to write. So it's not that easy to determine what happened with 1 to 7, but one explanation could be that the original text was using the imperative, and that's it got rephrased with time. Same thing here with 1629. We've got similar wording, obviously, as every variant reading, but it seems that epipesson could be seen as original and then rephrased into what the original hand of 05 shows with prosepesen prostus podas, which got changed by a corrector to suppress the pros tus podas, and which was then left as 03 in its final state. We can see also here the other example that I gave earlier, where we can call this, instead of taking the longer reading as only a longer reading, it still has some differences here, where asphalisas instead of asphalisasemos menos, sorry, that could show that the scribes or the authors have changed a little bit to change the way the text is run. So that's a new class of divergent readings, and there are 11 in total, which is quite extensive to some extent for a short portion of the text. What I noticed is also a number of conflated readings. There are 10 in total, which is also quite big. And by conflated reading, I mean that 1 to 7 and 03 seem to have really different variant readings, where 05 would be would know 127 and would know 03 at the same time, and 05 would then conflate the two readings, meaning that Bizet would here not be original, but would really look into, would really appear to be a mid-ground between 127 and 03. And while I have underlined the piece of textual material that is there in 127 and 03 and shows that 05 is conflated. Likewise, in 1624, we've got also a bit of 127, which has been taken into 03 with 03 to generate 05. Same thing here. We've got in 1635, we've got the Ecanus in 03, the Us Ertes Parelabes in 127. So 05 would take the Western reading, but also include the 03 reading. Now, there is another one, but I can't see the bottom of my page because of the legend here. But so I skip this one. So the third and last bit on 127 is a variation of the conflated reading, is what I would call the apparently harmonistic variant reading, which means that that 05 would take from 127 and 03. So sometimes the conclusion to this could be simply that 127 has a singular reading. However, it is sometimes not too consistent with the other textual variant readings, but obviously there are the two views can be suggested here, that simply 127 has its own reading as opposed to 05 and 03, which would be the original text. However, here Ikanais is also a possibility. It's quite like suggested as being a bit pedantic in Hellenistic Greek. However, should the original reading be Epipolas Hemeras, it's unlikely that 127 would change such a traditional way of saying a couple of days and change it into Ikanais. So it sounds to be like more of a rewording here. So here we've got like technically a real harmonistic way of seeing things, where 1624 has in 127 the subject which is spelled out with Desmophylax, and 05 which would reword in line with 03. So in this context, the subject would disappear. However, the whole day would be kept. 03 would reword or stylistically improve the text with the hos, with the relative pronouns, and 05 would keep the wording the same as 03. So same thing here. We have the complete rewording of 127. And again, the allusion with the Pentecost event here would be quite unlikely to be reminiscent of a new way of writing the text. And again, here I can't see my screen down below. Oh, yep. So it's difficult for me to see the text because there is this band that I cannot see. So hopefully you can see something, but I've got this green screen just before my screen, so I can't see. Anyway, and so there are also agreements between 03 and 127. So which would mean that the conclusion would be that 03 and 127 have knowledge of each other. However, by testing the differences, the list that I've produced, which is 13 examples in total, are all very insignificant variant readings. So in actual facts, saying that 03 and 127 also at times agree is actually only on very insignificant grounds, like an omitted chi, or on the other side, O5, which would then change its wording in the case of 1617, Evangelii Zontai instead of Catalogue Suicino. So this alternative way of reading things is again reminiscent of this old French theory that has been published in the 80s and rewritten in 2000. The results are quite ignored and were harshly criticized even in the within the French community. Actually, their idea was that, and they've explained this in a 3-volume book, that taking O5, which is usually regarded as the best representative of the Western text, is actually not as pure as this. So they have postulated, based mainly on versional evidence, that actually there should have been a first form of the Book of Acts, which would be the Western text, but with hardly any witness, and that's also obviously the weakness of the of their theory, that it's based only on versional evidence, but that's in fact O5 would be a combination of this Western text with the Alexandrian text represented by O3, and Acts 3 will be a different stage, which would be much close to the Alexandrian text. So here, what I would like to suggest is that this analysis that I've done on the conflated reading and harmonistic reading would be that actually in 127, which is the papyrus that Boismard-Lamouille had no access to, would be maybe an evidence of this type of a purer text of the being closer to the Western text, at least closer than what O5 is. So this is a different approach with leading to the same conclusions as Boismard-Lamouille had said, without prior knowledge of 127. So in conclusion, in terms of methodology, what I wanted to stress here is that this traditional analysis, which consists in talking about additions, omissions, substitutions, and harmonizations, again, which is a subjective way of analyzing variant readings, confirms neither more nor less that the Western that the 127 is Western in character, and it prevents from going any further in understanding the emergence of its variant reading. As in other terms, this type of analysis would lead to the fact that 127 is Western and that it adds material the same way as O5 has done. Again, because the understanding of O3 being the base text or the Ausgangstext is so well anchored. However, a further analysis refines the nature of differences between the three. So longer readings are not necessarily lexically identical between 127 and 05. So it's still Western, but it has its own development, which is what Parker and Pickering have discovered. And in those cases, and actually thanks to the electronic ECM, most of the time other manuscripts also have variant readings showing that there must have been a problem, and it's not just an erratic development of the scribe of 127. And also finally that alternative readings to 127 can be explained most of the time, and this is a work. This is also a work that I've conducted here, but because of lack of time, I can't show all the evidence. But that can be explained most of the time as stylistic improvements by the scribe of 03 or 05, who desired a better Greek in its text. in essence, two types of differences are evidenced in those places where O5 differs from O3 and 1 to 7. That's the variant readings of 1 to 7 and O3 against O5 that are scarce or reflect insignificant changes. And the two other conclusions where a conflation of 1 to 7 and O3 would be conflated into O5, and likewise that O5 could be actually an harmonized form of text between 1 to 7 and O3. So I'd like to conclude here with some heretical conclusions, hence the title of this paper. The traditional view, seeing Vaticanus as the Ausgangstext and O5 as a late erratic derivate, is deeply anchored in textual criticism, meaning that O5 and O27 will eventually be compared to O3 as late developments and as a corrupt text. So in this spirit, like 1 to 7 can be described as a further erratic element of the Western text with many singular readings. However, again, Parker and Pickering have stressed the fact that we need to reconsider the two forms of text after studying 1 to 7. Also, a substantially large number of examples of variant reading, I think there was like 60 in total, could help see O5 actually as a revision of the Western text in line with the Alexandrian form of text, which is then again reminiscent with the Boismard-Lamouille discussions. So obviously claiming that O5 is earlier than O3 is already known as being a bit heretical, but obviously claiming that 1 to 7 would be even earlier than 1 to 7 is even more heretical. However, data are telling, and we can really see this type of analysis being consistent with a large number of examples, which I have shared just an excerpt of here. And the final conclusion is really that identifying any tendency in any manuscript, specifically in papyri, is obviously closely associated to the way of seeing the development of the text itself. And while this is not so well known, at least it's not that objective, obviously any analysis of any text would then be extremely dependent on the initial hypothesis. In this case, if O3 is earlier than O5 or O5 is earlier than 1 to 7. That's the bibliography that I've shared also in terms of handouts, and I thank you very much for your attention.